Clash of the Castle has come and gone, and it was a show with some very good, very violent matches. It had some great in-ring storytelling, and it had swerves that, yes, we did see coming, but the delivery of how they gave it to us was genuinely a masterpiece. I just finished watching Clash of the Castle, and I'm excited to talk about it. Because in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the entire show. We're going to be going through every single match. I'm going to tell you whether I liked the match, whether I hated it, whether I liked the results, and how I think they can move forward. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring that bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm confident that you're going to fall in love with his YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's jump into it. Before we go into the match, we always like to talk about the crowd, and this crowd was genuinely fantastic. And to be fair, they had some very lofty expectations, especially off the back of that amazing Backlash crowd in Lyon, France. I will say this crowd was genuinely phenomenal. They were loud from beginning to end. They were loud for everyone and everything. I think that they were just more traditionally loud and traditionally rowdy. Meanwhile, the Lyon, France crowd was just so different and so unique, where they had chants and songs for moments that weren't even that particularly special, which made the mundane things that were happening in matches feel special. And I don't think that that's something that we can expect from every single crowd. I do think that the Lyon crowd is very unique in that aspect, and we're probably not going to see something like that ever again. So rather than sitting here and trying to compare the Scotland crowd to the Lyon, France crowd, I'm not going to do that. Like, the Scotland crowd was objectively fucking fantastic. I think some of the highlights would definitely be their chants and their songs at Cody Rhodes that lasted pretty much the entire match. That Cody Rhodes, Cody Rhodes. And then when we had Mama Rhodes, the chant changing from Cody Rhodes to Mama Rhodes, Mama Rhodes. Everything that you guys were doing throughout that match was fantastic. The love and adoration that you gave Drew McIntyre was genuinely bone chilling. I like The Rock. I had the goosebumps, baby. You guys were a fantastic crowd, loud from beginning to end. And I genuinely cannot wait for the WWE to return to Scotland, because you guys left a very, very good impression on everyone around the world. I just don't want people being like, they wasn't as good as the Lyon crowd. Look, it's a different beast altogether. I feel like it's impossible to compare crowds to Lyon anymore. But you compare the Scotland crowd to, I don't know, backwoods Minnesota or wherever the hell the WWE likes to go, they were a gazillion times better than pretty much any American crowd that you can muster up. So congratulations, Glasgow. You were amazing, and I cannot wait to see more potentially in the future in the WWE going there. But now let's actually jump into the matches. And the show surprisingly started with Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles for the WWE Undisputed Championship in an I Quit match. And I was expecting this match to not be the closer, but I didn't think that they would open with it, because the stipulation would mean that the match would have to get super uber violent, which it did. Not only was it violent in terms of the moveset that they were coming out with, because they were pulling out brain busters on tables. They were pulling out actual tables to break through. They had chains, they had handcuffs, they had kendo sticks. They were getting real nasty in this match. But when a match gets that nasty and that violent, it's usually something that happens on later in the card so that the crowd doesn't get exhausted for the rest of the show. So the WWE was bold and said, screw it, this is the opening match, and it was awesome. As I already talked about, this match was very violent. We had both competitors bleeding quite badly throughout the majority of the match as well. I do think that the I Quit match stipulation definitely benefited Cody Rhodes so much more, because a babyface like Cody Rhodes is never gonna lie down and say I quit. Like, Cody Rhodes was getting hit with everything. The only thing that was missing was somebody pulling a chainsaw on him and chopping him in half for him to say I quit finally. It was actually the involvement of Mama Rhodes being front and center in that match that made me believe that maybe there was a chance that AJ Styles would use Mama Rhodes, or maybe the Gallows and Anderson would come down and threaten Mama Rhodes to try and get Cody Rhodes to say I quit. But this was, for the most part, what you can call a clean I Quit match. There was no shenanigans and there was no real underhanded tactics to try and get the other guy to say I quit. But the work rate of this match was genuinely fantastic. The violence of this match was over the top in the best types of ways. And shout out to AJ Styles, who took a nasty bump where he took a chair to the head, fell backwards into a table. It was such a gnarly spot. I think the only complaint about this match, and this is truly nitpicking, was that it was so good that I'm upset it ended when it did, because I felt like we were getting a perfect I Quit match that could have gone beyond perfect. It got to the point where I really felt like they could have stepped on the gas a little bit more, given them 5 more minutes, and given us an I Quit match that we would never forget. But instead, the match did end rather abruptly as Cody Rhodes was threatening AJ Styles with the steel steps. AJ Styles said, okay, I'm done, I quit. I just felt like they could have done a tiny bit more. I felt like the way that the match was building up and building up and building up, that we were going to see something brutal, extra brutal from Cody Rhodes onto AJ Styles. And it didn't get to that, but don't get me wrong, everything else was already fantastic. All I'm saying is that I think there was room for more. So overall, the match, how they handled the stipulation, the involvement of Mama Rhodes not being like overbearing. She did at one point like slap AJ Styles, and AJ Styles threatened to hit her over the head with a chair, which was kind of hilarious. I like that she wasn't overly important in this, is what I'm trying to say. But the crowd made this special. Both competitors was amazing. This gets a thumbs up from me all the way. We did have a little bit more happen afterwards where Cody Rhodes was celebrating, and then right beside him was Solo Sikoa, who spawned like a PlayStation 2 character, and then out came Tama Tonga and Tongaloa to try and beat up Cody Rhodes. But then we had Randy Orton and Kevin Owens instantly come out to make the save, presumably setting up a 6-man tag match, most likely at Money in the Bank. But if you look closely at that scene, Randy Orton was looking a little bit too suspicious the way that he was eyeing down that WWE Championship. So maybe this is the start of Orton versus Cody Rhodes. One last thing that I'll comment on is that a lot of people in my chat were saying that this is the beginning of heel Cody Rhodes. I don't see it that way. We've seen John Cena reach these levels where he gets violent, he gets vicious, but it's never something that even comes close to a heel turn of any sort. And I think that was the case with Cody Rhodes, who did really dig into the bag of tricks of violence and viciousness, where I could see why some people might think that these are the seeds of him turning heel. But I just think that this is him digging into that different place of his to overcome the odds. I don't think that it's him turning heel. Now let's talk about the triple threat match for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships between the champions Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, taking on the unholy union of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, as well as Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler. First of all, I just want to say, I told you, I've been trying to tell you from the beginning that this was the plot all along. I've been saying that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn were gonna go from main event to Monday Night Raw, and then from Monday Night Raw to having a match at Glasgow for the women's tag titles, and they were going to walk out as the women's tag champions. And I spoiled it for you. I tried to tell you, all right? What can I say? But ultimately, I do think that in terms of having the unholy union win here, they made the right decision. Not because I think that Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair were bad champions. Actually, the complete opposite. I think that they were fantastic tag champions that were getting better and better and better with time. A set of champions that was genuinely elevating the entire division and the women around them. However, in my opinion, right now, even though they were great in the tag team division, both of them individually, Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, are far more needed right now in the women's main event scene, especially over on Monday Night Raw, where Liv Morgan literally has no one to feud with or have matches with. So I do hope that, I don't know if they're going to go their separate ways. Maybe they make a trade for somebody on Monday Night Raw, but somebody like Bianca Belair would be so important to Monday Night Raw right now should she were to go over there. I hope that this doesn't mean that the Women's Tag Championships is now going to revert back, because I will say, you know, having Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill as champions meant that those championships were always featured because they were two megastars and big draws in the company. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are not those things. They aren't that. But we'll see. I know that they're a great set of champions, and I'm sure that they'll deliver great in-ring matches, but I really hope that this doesn't mean that we're going to revert back to the days of the women's tag titles only getting 2 minutes matches. But I thought that this match was great. The only thing that I didn't like about this match was the fact that a good chunk of it was the lazy triple threat that I don't like, which is where there are 2 people in the ring and 1 person selling on the outside. So it's really just a one-on-one match with an occasional third person coming in. I don't like that style of triple threat match. And for the most part, this was this. But when we did have the action of the 3 women in the ring, or when it broke into chaos and every woman was in there, it really was genuinely entertaining. I think one of the coolest part was the fact that both Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair were absolutely torching and cooking everyone, to the point where Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, and the Unholy Union got together almost in like a football huddle and said, okay, let's team up. And they spent the next little while absolutely destroying Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill because they were teaming up. I think that that's smart. I like that the heels got together and said, let's partner up. I know that there's going to be a lot of conversation and talk about the Jade Cargill botch, but dude, that shit happens. And clearly, as we're going to talk about later, I think there was something off with those ropes. I felt like they were slipperier than usual because she wasn't the only one that had a botch on the ropes. But I don't think we should focus on that because that was one botch that didn't hurt anyone that she fully recovered from. I think that we're putting too much attention on the negative, that single little negative, when the rest of the entire story was really, really good. I like the match. I like the decision. I cannot wait to see what they do with Jade and Bianca because they're really needed right now, both SmackDown and Raw, in my opinion. So we'll see. Thumbs up, though. Now let's talk about the Intercontinental Championship match between Sami Zayn taking on the challenger Chad Gable, who also came out with Otis as well as Maxine Dupree. In my prediction, I said that this was going to be a match that didn't have a ton of involvement from Otis and Maxine Dupree, and I was actually unfortunately wrong because they were heavily involved in this match and heavily involved in the outcome of this match in a very similar vein to the triple threat match at King and Queen of the Ring. Now, before I talk about those story beats, let me actually talk about the match itself, because the match itself was a freaking classic. I thought that this was absolutely magnificent. And it's no surprise because at the end of the day, it is Chad Gable versus Sami Zayn. They don't know how to put on bad matches against one another. Every single time that they stand across from each other in that ring, it is always fantastic. And it was no different here. This was a great technical match with some really cool high-flying spots as well. The crazy moment in this match was definitely this like back suplex. I think it was like a dragon snap suplex that Sami Zayn did to Chad Gable. And if you go back and watch the slow-mo, Chad Gable landed on his head. I don't know how that didn't break his freaking neck. But yes, the match itself in terms of the in-ring work rate was fantastic. The thing that I just didn't particularly love was the continuous rehash of this exact same story beat over and over again. I feel like at a PLE, if you're going to do this type of storyline, it needs to push it forward. It needs to move it along. But the way that it happened with Otis and Maxine not wanting to be involved, Maxine accidentally getting hit, Otis choosing to not help Chad Gable instead of choosing to carry Maxine to the back, we've seen that before. It's happened before. It didn't elevate anything. It didn't push anything forward. I think when you're at a PLE, we should have either had the moment of Otis attacking Chad or Otis helping Chad, one or the two, but they just kind of did the same thing. It was the same thing that we've seen before, but it was admittedly still entertaining because the Chad Gable and Alpha Academy stuff is just cinema, man. It really is really entertaining stuff. It's just that they seem to be moving at a snail's pace in terms of giving us major plot beats, because this wasn't a major plot beat in the Alpha Academy side of things. It really was what we've already seen before. But the finish of the match with Chad Gable having Sami Zayn in the ankle lock on the outside, Sami Zayn rolling through, which meant accidentally Chad Gable hit Maxine in the back of the leg. Like that, I did like that. I like the way that it was delivered, but again, nothing too new. We saw the Maxine injury angle already on Monday Night Raw. And they spent a really good chunk of time there at the end, to the point where that was the main focus of the match by the end. And it was what led to the finish of the match, which in my opinion kind of took my eyeballs away from how good the actual in-ring work was. So this is just me like opening up the folds and looking underneath places maybe I necessarily shouldn't, because I still really like this. I'm just trying to look at things on a bit more of a critical lens. It's still a thumbs up from me. Next up, we have Bayley versus Piper Niven for the WWE Women's Championship. And I think this is the match where I think the crowd kind of had a bit of a lull. They're like, okay, well, we have the main event. We have Drew McIntyre coming up. We've been exhausted cheering for Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. We got exhausted for the I Quit match because there were so many insane spots. Of course, the Chad Gable versus Sami Zayn match was so good in ring that we got spent. So I feel like they were saving their energy here because the crowd didn't come out too hard for this one. It was pretty clear right from the beginning, right from the entrances, where neither Piper Niven nor Bayley really got that big crowd reaction when their music hit. There were some attempts to get those Bayley chant songs going, but it didn't really hit as hard as in the press conference. There were some attempts at getting some Piper chants going, but those didn't really get going. So the crowd was admittedly a little bit off here. Now, the match itself, I didn't particularly enjoy like 85% of it. I feel like the first good 3/4 of this match were pretty slow and nothing that was really getting me off of my seat to celebrate. I actually think that losing Chelsea Green near the beginning of the match where the ref kicked her out actually hurt this match, because so much of the enjoyment of the Piper Niven character is the fact that she's got this little goblin running around causing chaos in Chelsea Green, and losing that so early on in the match made Piper lose a little bit of her allure. Funny enough, when the match got good in my eyes again? When Chelsea Green came back out after she got kicked out wearing a Rey Mysterio mask, to mask her identity to try and help Piper Niven, who was hit with a top rope Bayley to belly. So Chelsea Green was distracting the ref to make sure that he didn't count. After that, the match actually got really good because we had Piper Niven hit this nasty driver that honestly looked like it was going to decapitate Bayley. And then the match did go through its natural progression there at the end. But that was where I was actually the most excited about this match. The last, I'd say about 4 minutes of this match is where I really got invested into it. But everything before that, I was a bit out of it and not really engaged with what was happening. I think the result makes sense. I think it is the right result. I had a feeling this was going to be the case, especially after Alba Fire and Isla Dawn won, that the rest of the Scots were going to lose. Piper Niven was never somebody that I thought was a threat to really win this, especially with Nia Jax down the line. And I think Nia Jax versus Bayley is the perfect next iteration of whatever should happen with the WWE Women's Championship. So the result makes sense. I think it's the right result, but I don't think that this was particularly a great showcase of wrestling. It gets a thumbs down for me. I wasn't particularly super entertained. The Chelsea Green stuff, it was good, but it was so few and far between because they decided to kick her out. I feel like that was the big mistake of this match ultimately. Now let's talk about Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship match that ended up being the main event, and thank God that was the right choice. You needed to have this main event. Whether it had the swerve or not, Drew McIntyre needed to close this show. This was instant hostile territory for Damian Priest right from the entrance of Drew McIntyre, who came out with the bagpipes. They were having the how loud the arena was meter that they had, over 100 decibels. So the arena was loud for Drew McIntyre and super hostile for Damian Priest. Just like the AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes match, the crowd was involved basically from beginning to end as well, with some awesome chants like the Drew chants, the Drew McIntyre songs. Like, they were so behind their boy here. We talked about the slippery ropes with Jade Cargill, and they came to bite Damian Priest in the ass again, because that was one of the scariest botches that I've ever seen in my life, where Damian Priest went for that like run up little flip that he does on the ropes, but he slipped, and then his leg got caught between the top rope and the middle rope, and the rope bent in to where he was stuck, but he was still going at full speed and momentum. I thought it snapped his leg. I thought that it snapped his ACL. I thought, dude, match is done. There's no way that this is going to continue. Luckily, the match was able to continue. But again, this is another reminder that these things happen. But I don't want to focus on the botch, because I don't think that the botch impacted the rest of the match. It's just something that I wanted to point out because I know a lot of people are talking about it. And I hope he's not hurt, by the way, because Damian Priest Priest sold that knee and ankle for the rest of the match. And I've never seen him sell that well, to the point where it's making me concerned that he's actually hurt. I deeply hope that he is not injured from that, because that would be just such an awful freak injury, honestly. The match itself was kind of exactly what I expected from Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest. I don't know if the injury impacted what the choreography was ultimately going to be, but this never really pushed the envelope as an actual match itself. We had some big moves, big slaps. We had a couple of Claymore kicks south of Heavens. We had a Razor's Edge. We even had a Claymore kick through the barricade. These are all things that I kind of expected from a matchup with guys with the moveset and body types such as Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre. I did feel like this match from an in-ring work rate had a very low ceiling, but they got to it. They got to the ceiling, and it was, in my opinion, as good as Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre could possibly be. Now, really where we're all going to talk about this match isn't what happened in the ring. It's how the match ended, because I genuinely think that this was a super clever way to end what was a very predictable match. Towards the end of the match, there's a sequence where the ref gets knocked out. Drew McIntyre avoids a South of Heaven chokeslam from Damian Priest and then counters it into a nasty Claymore kick. But of course, there's no ref. He counts Damian Priest. Crowd is counting basically all the way up to 10. We see a ref sprinting at full speed like Charles Robinson did at WrestleMania 23. But then when we go to the count 1, 2, ref stops, camera pans, and the ref is CM Punk. Here's the thing. I knew CM Punk was getting involved. It had to happen. But the way that they decided to go about it, absolutely brilliant. This was absolutely not on my bingo card in any way, shape, or form. And also the camera work to hide the fact that it was CM Punk until the last second reveal. Production genius, folks. We then have Drew McIntyre go to try and choke CM Punk, and CM Punk hits him with a low blow, opening up Damian Priest to hit the South of Heaven chokeslam to win 1, 2, 3 and walk out as the champion. Dude, what a brilliant finish. Now, as a fan, what I will say, especially in that ending, Damian Priest was such a third wheel here, which your champion should never feel like the third wheel. Because I'm so much more excited as to what Drew McIntyre and CM Punk are going to be up to on Monday Night Raw, way more than Damian Priest. Really, what I want to know about Damian Priest is whether he's injured or not. Again, fingers crossed that he's not. Now, the fact that the match was as good as I think it could have possibly been, and the fact that this swerve that a lot of us saw coming was delivered in such a brilliant, really unique way, to me, like, I have no other recourse but to give this a clap, not Joe Hendry clap, because we didn't get Joe Hendry, and 2 thumbs up, because I feel like the show was capped perfectly. Overall, I think that Clash of the Castle was a great show, and I expected this to be a great show. My expectations for this were quite high, and I do believe that my expectations were met. Well done, WWE. Well done, Scotland. Well done to every performer that went out there, put their body on the line to give us such great entertainment this afternoon. Good stuff. Thumbs up for the entire show, but that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.